Hello and welcome to the King Street Cinema podcast. My name's Andy. I'm joined as ever by James. Hello, James.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm good. Yourself?
Yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, it's a bit early mornings and that, but
It might not be early morning to the listener.
Maybe not. We're recording this early.
Yes, it is now 21 minutes past 9 a.m, which for me is ruddy early. And we've got lots to talk about this episode, which is going to be kind of a two-parter for the 80s season. Do you want to quickly mention?
Yeah, so at the first week of August 2024 is the year, we will be doing a week of 80s movies, and the week festival, if you like, is called One from the 80s, the play on the film One from the Heart, which will be the first film we'll be showing of that series of films on the Friday, which is the 2nd, I believe.
2nd of August, Friday.
On that day, we'll also be showing a new film called Film Geek, which is I haven't seen it yet, but looks to be a wonderful film about a guy's journey through his love of films, basically, and growing up at a time in New York City in the 70s and 80s where he just basically devoured films. And how that contributed to the life he has, and also a family as well. I think it's a bit of a family story about his connection with his father as well. And it looks really good. I've seen bits of it. It looks really great.
The trailer looks really good. You trailered it before Sasquatch Sunset last week.
We've been trailering it, but I've seen parts of it as well, like the opening 10 minutes, and it looks really engaging.
Yeah, and there's a recorded Q&A especially for the cinema after. Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah, see, I remember these things. But more details, we'll get it in now because I often rush it at the end. But do follow the King Street Cinema on Facebook. It's on Instagram. And there's the best place to check, I always say, is the website because everything's on there. Yeah. And you can get your tickets from there as well. Yeah. All the tickets for the festival, individual, but reasonably priced, I believe. Yeah. I've got tickets for the Saturday, which we're going to be talking about.
Right.
There's 4 movies showing on the Saturday.
There are.
And in this podcast, we're going to try to talk about each of the 4 films for around 15 minutes.
Yeah,
that's. I've got a watch. We're not going to have a stopwatch and a buzzer, but we're going to start with 11 a.m.
Yes. So the first film at 11 a.m. is The Great Muppet Caper.
From 1981.
Released in 1981. Directed by Jim Henson.
That was the first movie he directed, I believe.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised necessarily because I've never known of him too much as being sort of the director, though I know he had done directed shorts.
Was Frank Oz the first one?
That sounds right. Yeah. Was it Frank Oz?
I'm going to have a quick look.
Because you know what? I always get this a bit confused because I thought that Jim Henson was involved with the direction of the first film.
Yeah.
But maybe I was completely wrong about that. Maybe that was The Dark Crystal, which came the year after this one. That might be the one I'm thinking of.
When I think of movies directed by Jim Henson, I think Dark Crystal and obviously Labyrinth. So, but yeah, I mean, I guess I reckon it's Frank Oz done the first one because Frank Oz went on to... I'm completely wrong. James Frawley.
Okay.
Who in 1979 he directed The Big Bus. Lots of sort of Nancy Drew stuff like that.
Yeah.
So lots of sort of family stuff and TV things.
Stuff, yeah.
I reckon he came more from TV looking at
It's a funny old thing, the Muppets, because it can be quite confusing unless you're really sort of on, like a really massive fan and you know all the facts.
Yeah.
You would assume that it would either be Frank Oz or Jim Henson, if because those are names that who are very much involved with the Muppets. Obviously, Jim Henson being the main guy and Frank Oz being sort of like his best friend.
Yeah.
Who also went on to be a quite famous filmmaker in his own right.
And he was involved with the writing of the Muppets and voiced obviously Miss Piggy famously.
Yeah, and a few others. Yeah. But certainly, Miss Piggy's probably the most. But they did Bert and Ernie together, obviously from Sesame Street. It was the original Bert and Ernie, I believe. Which is
that's cool.
Yeah.
This is one that, for me, it's kind of. I see this as kind of the forgotten of the early Muppet movies.
That's interesting that you say that because I completely agree with you. just based on my own experience
Yeah.
with the Muppets, this is the one that I know the least about. I remember I didn't see it till probably about 20 years ago, so I didn't see it as a child. And I remember seeing clips of it at times, but I never watched it.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I remember thinking that this is really good, and it's a real shame that I didn't see this as a child because,
Yeah,
it's a really good film.
I honestly can't remember if I saw it as a child. The first one stands out because it's the first one, and that was on TV a lot. I really liked Muppets Take Manhattan.
Yeah, so that's the one I knew the most of.
That's the one I had recorded on video from TV, so I watched it the most.
Yeah.
And I think with that, because it was more of a Big Show musical, it's more, for me, it was more memorable. There was the scene, you had the Muppet Babies in that one.
You did, yeah.
And then the famous scene with them all on bikes.
Yeah. I thought that was Caper. Is that not Muppet?
No, there's a scene where they're all.
Oh, okay. I thought the bike ride. I thought the bike ride song was. I don't know. Because there's a song, isn't there, that they sing?
Yeah, there is a.
But maybe there's two like things.
I seem to remember that vividly, so I think it would have been from. There's possibly a bit of bike riding in this as well.
Yeah.
But I've seen this one. I probably 10 years ago. There was a Blu-ray box set come out, and I rewatched it. It seemed familiar. I reckon I had seen it as a kid, but maybe just flicked it on when it was on TV.
Right.
And what stands out for me with this one is it almost seemed a bit darker because of the plot being a caper. You know, the sort of, it's almost a heist.
It's a heist. Yeah.
And it's very British. I don't know if it was set in the UK. Certainly filmed over here.
Oh yeah, it is set in London. In London, yeah, sure. And yes, didn't they film all of the stuff?
I think so.
Back then, in London.
Yeah, but this one, well, I'm not sure if it was all filmed in London back then, but they used Pinewood Studios, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But this seemed very British, and the one thing I always connected with this film was John Cleese. Right. I think he's only got a cameo.
Yeah, I don't think he's not one of the main parts. And there are a lot of Muppet films, obviously, because they had the show, which always had a guest star and stuff.
Yeah, that was
John Cleese was one of those, wasn't he? He was on the Muppet Show, and I think that's how it generally works, isn't it? That you sort of like get people that you've either had on your show before or in some way connected with the Muppets. So yeah. But who wouldn't want to be on the Muppet? Have a little cameo in a Muppet film? Or
exactly.
I
mean, the first one stands out for me for Steve Martin and Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of both. This one I think was less cameo heavy, but there was some in there.
Mm-hmm.
John Cleese stands out. There was an uncredited one by Peter Falk.
There's Peter Falk and there's Jack Warden as well, the two that I vaguely remember.
And the human stars was Charles Gordon.
Yeah.
And
from the Beethoven movie.
Yeah. But this would have been around the time of, was it before Midnight Run and things like that?
Certainly Midnight Run's late 80s, isn't it? Yeah. But he was in a movie, the only film that I can think of that I know that I like a lot is an early Albert Brooks, I think Albert Brooks' first film that he directed, which was called Real Life, which was a kind of a mockumentary style sort of reality TV show made in 1979, so it's really sort of ahead of its time. And Charles is in that.
Yeah, he's in a lot of stuff, more than you'd think. I think it might have even been the same year or a year later. He was in The Lonely Guy with that's another Steve Martin one who's in that.
Yeah,
but he was probably more back then, more known for serious stuff, wasn't he?
Do you know what? I really don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really know his career too well, other than the sort of the more, like say, the one I just mentioned, which is a comedy, and other things, which I guess some of them are sort of comedy dramas, I suppose.
But I think our generation would know him as Beethoven.
That film was quite popular, I suppose, when we were kids ourselves.
I think it's a really funny film I watched recently. I knew I watched something recently with him in The Couch Trip with Dan Aykroyd. He's in that, which is a forgotten movie as well, I suppose. But I say with this one, it's sort of more under the radar. Maybe it's one that the actual bigger Muppet fans like more. I mean,
well, from what I remember, like I say, it was a while ago that I saw it. I remember it being quite extravagant.
Yeah.
I remember feeling that this one feels like it's got more, money behind it perhaps than any of the others around the time anyway, at that point when Jim Henson was still alive. And I'm sure because of the success of the Muppets in general, especially the first film, that they really went all out with this one.
Yeah, this was really when the Muppets was on at the highest point.
Highest, I would say. Yeah, you got. Yeah.
And what I like is they're definitely upped the budget just by.
Certainly, of course.
Is this one is more? They've gone more for a plot, and maybe this is the first time really they've gone to aim at the adult market as well as as much as the kids. It's still for kids, but because of the plot and the whole heist thing.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the producers said that one of the reasons it didn't do as well as they were expecting, it still was a hit, was because they used the word caper, and those films were big in the 70s, and it was sort of dipping.
Oh, certainly, it does have that. You're right. That word caper is sort of an old-fashioned type word.
Yeah.
But I always thought of the Muppets as being a bit old-fashioned in that sense.
Yeah.
Like they were very much sort of like a sort of throwback, being sort of from the Muppet Show, it being a variety type thing, stage thing. It always felt like it was something that was like a, kind of out, not necessarily out of touch, like, but it never was about that.
I always saw it as kind of almost like a noir type. It's that overcoat wearing.
Yes. Well, the film itself certainly. Yeah. I was just thinking of the Muppets.
Yeah. But this one, so it's like it's a throwback. Yeah. Whereas the next movie, Takes Manhattan, is a throwback to musicals.
Sure.
So that goes even further back.
But of course, we're going to get there, aren't we, with the Muppets, to actually making a musical, because that's what they've always been about. They're a song and dance comedy. They're a variety. Yeah. That's what they do. So the idea of them, actually making a musical, a film that is a musical.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to get to.
Exactly, and this one being more story heavy.
Yes,
I think if you haven't seen the Muppets film, or you're taking along youngsters who know nothing about the Muppets, this might be a good introduction.
Yeah,
because they might just think, if they were just watching an episode of the Muppet Show, for example, I think it's just a bit silly.
Yeah.
Whereas there's characters and plot. And
sure. Yeah, I agree. I think as a film, it's probably the best of the films, as in like you say, like a more rounded story, and all those kind of things. And so if you're not familiar,
and
then it's a good one to start.
And a little fun fact: probably the most loved Muppet movie nowadays would be the Christmas Carol.
Oh, certainly.
This, even though it didn't make as much money as they wanted, this was a bigger hit.
There we go.
The fifth most successful Muppet movie this was.
Right.
But they've made about 9, haven't they? So it's about halfway.
Right.
The first one was the biggest hit, and then they done the Muppet movie more recently, probably about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Then the sequel to that, and then Treasure Island was a big hit as well.
Was it?
And then this, and I think Treasure Island was a bigger hit. That one, I'd say, it's one of the weaker ones.
Right.
But I think Carol came out. No one went to see it, but then when it came on video,
it was
and word of mouth, it done
huge success.
And then the next film they done was bouncing off that, so to speak.
Yeah.
And but this had a 14 million budget and made 31 million.
There you go.
So it made money and made enough to do sequel.
Yeah, absolutely. And
but I think with a 14 million, they were probably thinking this would do 45 million.
Yeah, I don't know what the budget or the takings of the original film were, but I'm sure that obviously the budget was going to be lower, and I'm sure that it took more on average.
And you do have to think as well. Muppets, I think, have done well to stick around, because a lot of stuff aimed at kids got 2-3 year lifespan, then forgotten.
Yeah. Because
the kids grow up and the next generation don't get into it. Very few things have stayed around. I mean, if you look at us growing up, things like Master of the Universe, by the time the film came out, the big phase had almost gone, and then the film didn't do so well.
Yeah.
The only one in recent years I can think, say recent, the last 20-30 years, was really stuck. Muppets has, they've revamped it a few times. Ninja Turtles has.
Right.
There's always stuff coming out of that, but then there's a lot of forgotten things. And I think the Muppets, because it's the appeal to adults as well. Adults want to take their kids to see the Muppets, I think.
Sure, I agree. I think that Muppets has the staying power because of its versatility and because of its learning and teaching and giving all of the lovely things I think that you want out of life. Friendship, companionship, like working together, all these kind of things. It's just done, like you say, in a way that can appeal to a really broad audience.
Yeah.
So that's really why it's worked so well.
And that is why I get angry at Guy Ritchie and people like that who use Muppet as an insult, because it shouldn't be an insult.
Absolutely,
The Muppets are awesome.
there's nothing but absolute respect for the Muppets.
Yeah, the Muppets rule, and underrated songwriters as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Their musicals are fantastic. Their songs are brilliant.
Yeah, they are. So yeah, that's on at 11 a.m.
Yes.
And then
it's a U certificate as well,
certificate.
so everyone welcome.
Everyone should be there. If you ask
absolutely.
me. And I certainly will be. I've already got my ticket, haven't I?
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep reminding people. August the 3rd, this one at 11 a.m. Then after that, at 2 p.m.
2 o'clock.
2 p.m. from 1984.
Ooh. Moving up a few years here. From 81 to 84.
Yeah, the Neverending Story.
The Neverending Story.
And if you were to name 10 kids' films from the 80s, this would definitely be in it.
In the 10, yeah.
In the 10.
Yeah, without question.
Yeah.
It's got to be, right?
Yeah, it's
for ones that you say, definitely kids,
Yeah.
not teenagers. Not sort of like,
Also U certificate? Was it
U
PG?
certificate.
It might be PG now.
I think it's always been a U. I think I've always remembered it. We have it as a U, but I'm pretty sure it always has been.
Yeah. My thinking is maybe it had a special edition where it's gone up to PG for
maybe
things said in commentaries or things like
maybe.
that. Possibly. But yeah, I remember it's a U certificate, and it'll be a U certificate at the cinema.
Yes.
Yeah. What can we say about this movie? Iconic fantasy based on a novel.
Yes.
Based on a novel by, is it Michael Ende? Is that his name? Yeah.
It's German, as far as I'm aware.
Oh yes.
I think it's German. I know that the production was a West German American production.
But German director, famous German director.
Wolfgang Petersen, who wasn't very famous at the time, but he had come off perhaps his biggest movie ever, Das Boot.
Yeah.
But went on to become a big Hollywood action thriller
In the
director,
Line of Fire.
In the Line of Fire, films of that nature.
Ooh, topical.
Yeah. What was that one with Harrison Ford?
Was it Air Force One? Yeah.
There's a kind of a these days you look at those kind of films from the 90s and go not so great, but they were massive films.
Huge,
they were huge films at the time. Also did Perfect Storm, which I always quite liked.
That's one I've never seen.
Didn't particularly like the ending, but up to the ending I always thought that was a pretty good
True
movie.
story though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's not yet. Yeah.
And it's got Shooter McGowan in it,
legend,
who predicts the perfect storm. In fact.
You mean Christopher McDonald?
No.
All the films that guy's been in. Yeah, he was in Grease 2 and those, and he's just nowadays he's just Shooter McGowan.
Yeah. But anyway, so yes, that's Wolfgang Petersen, the director of this wonderful 80s kids classic.
Yeah, and this is one as well, going back to like how successful it was. People sort of looking it up online. There's a lot of stuff about it didn't do very well, and it did. It was a huge hit.
Oh, absolutely.
It cost 27 million and made 100 million. That's a big hit.
That is I'm sure that's a worldwide number, but still, it's huge.
For a film where, so he come off Des Boot, which critically and commercially, I was guessing huge, is an iconic film. Yeah. But the audience of Kids Fantasy wouldn't care that he'd done that. So no one went to see this for the director.
No.
There's no stars in it.
No.
And most of the people in it they're now doing the con circuit. They're doing and the main lad in it. There's actually a documentary coming out very soon called Life After the Neverending Story about what he's doing now.
Well, he's a photographer, I think, and has been for a long time, I believe. I think that's right.
I don't know.
I think so.
Because I think it focuses mainly on him, and then the other sort of kid stars in it.
I remember being, quite. He's a recognisable face because he was in a few things in the 80s. He was in Daryl, if anyone saw that one. I loved Daryl growing up. Yeah. And the Cocoon films as well. With our man
Steve Gumberg. You mentioned him, not me.
So there you go. He was certainly
maybe
a face.
This documentary focuses more on Atreyu, actually.
Right. We were talking about the other kid.
Yeah,
Sorry. Right. See, because they get Bastian, and then who is the one reading the story. Yeah. And then Atreyu, who is the character we follow within the story of Neverending Story.
But I think it focuses on it looks good, and I think it's just getting a DVD release. It's a guy who done I think it was called Life After Flash, actually, about Sam Jones, a documentary about who played Flash Gordon.
Yes.
And he basically does these documentaries about...
Right, yeah, about people that had a moment in the film industry and then what they went on to do otherwise.
And if it's as good as that one, it's in for a treat. But we're here to talk about Neverending Story, a movie I've never seen in the cinema. You have.
I saw it in the cinema, not obviously originally when it came out, because I would have been 2 years old. Well, I mean, I could have, but I wouldn't remember that. I saw it in '93. Not at some sort of festival or convention or anything like that. It was on my local cinema that was taking people on tours around the cinema, so you could see back, upstairs in the projection room and around in just parts of the building that you'd never generally get to see. And after the tour, you had a choice of 2 movies. One of them was The Neverending Story, and the other one was a film that had just recently come out, My Girl, which obviously everyone wanted to go see. And I was the only person pretty much in the cinema wanting to see Neverending Story. And I just found it so weird that people did not want to see this movie. Yeah. Obviously, My Girl was a huge success, and I saw My Girl another time, and it was, I saw what people were seeing in the film. I recognised, this was a really big film and a good one. With stars in it, which you want to see those names. Macaulay Culkin was one of the biggest names of all time. You had Dan Aykroyd, Jamie Lee Curtis. And people probably don't remember this, especially people who weren't there at the time. But in the early '90s, especially 80s, things were not cool.
Oh no way! Yeah,
they were completely like, when you think of the '80s now, '80s is like this nostalgia trip gone nuts. Yeah. In the early 90s, people wanted to forget the 80s. The 80s were a thing that people were like, we're done with that. That was a bit embarrassing, actually, kind of attitude.
Yeah.
And so, it's a funny time, it's when you think of today.
And then sort of early 2000s, really, they realised they were idiots and wrong, and the 80s ruled.
Yeah, well, there are amazing things about the 80s, of course. But there was very much this attitude that... at that time, that was that the 80s were just, because they had just passed. We had just passed that decade. So
if you look at music from the 80s to the 90s, it's all like pop and rock was very happy, and then you got from glam rock to grunge. It's a big sort of
absolutely
almost like from when prog rock to punk. It was that you just go against it.
Absolutely. Neverending Story, though, as a film is quite dark. It has very dark themes, and it's very much of the 80s, where you have quite a lot of dark fantasy stories being told and are getting pushed. There's people wanting to produce these kind of films.
Yeah.
They often don't do. This one did do very well, because it's not a dark fantasy, but it has dark themes within it. It's certainly, for children. This is certainly not I would say, a U certificate, that shouldn't be. Yeah. I think this is, certainly a film that kids should see. But it certainly was. You look at it and you really feel that time. The time of the 80s, where there were darker kind of these kind of fantasy stories being told. Of course, practical effects are massive in the film, because they were in the 80s, where you had a lot of just genius stuff being made. On small budgets. I'm very sorry, my phone is ringing. Very, very sorry. I'll just turn that off.
It's usually me.
Yes, sorry. That was work, actually, so that's, probably should have taken that, but anyway.
Sorry, I'm doing stuff for work.
So if you're into those kind of things and you haven't seen this film, then you definitely should see this. But saying that aside, it is certainly a story for everyone. Another one of these films where you go, this is not just a kid's story, this is for adults as well, but kids certainly would enjoy this.
Yeah, it's visual treat.
Absolutely. It looks, everyone I'm sure has seen, even if you haven't seen the film, images of the movie, because it's become such an iconic thing in the time that we now live in, of looking back at these movies from sort of 40 years ago now. Amazing, 40 years ago, crazy. Where we see things like, the Luck Dragon and they say Atreyu and the childlike empress, and these the characters' images which have been taken and used in pop culture of today. And you can't really escape the film, even if you haven't seen the film.
And you may even know the theme song.
Absolutely, which is very famous. In fact, I remember the first time I saw this film, when because it plays in the opening credits. Just being like, as a kid, getting that feeling of this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
You know, because the theme tune just completely, the theme song just completely like embodies what the film is, and it's really good like now, I think.
Yeah.
And it's a little annoying, I suppose, to hear if you've heard it a million times.
Yeah.
But if you've never heard it, it is one of those tunes I think you go, oh, that's a catchy
And it's
number.
not actually overplayed.
Not at all. At all. But it was a single. They brought it out as a single. It was played loads just on the radio and stuff.
Yeah, and I think it really helped with the promotion of the film.
Absolutely, without question.
And it went on to, it spawned 2 sequels, a TV series, which the TV series didn't do very well, but it was one. I remember the second one coming out really vividly with the white cover poster.
Yeah,
I
remember that too.
I've never seen it.
Really?
No, it's based. The novel it's based on. This film only covers half it. I believe the second film covers more of it.
Right.
And then the third film, they just made up their own story. There's talk of a remake, which. If you go online, there's a lot of why bother, and I'm kind of with them. There's no need, reissue it. Oh, they have. You can come and see it.
Yeah.
I put it in with films like Legend, Labyrinth.
It's what it is.
But this is the one. Maybe this helped get those movies made because this was a big hit. Labyrinth and Legend weren't so much. There was Lady Hawk as well.
Was Lady Hawk.
And this one hasn't gone away, but it hasn't gone too mad. There hasn't been 12 sequels. There's not been a cartoon. There's not been, you know. And I think that's one of the reasons there's still the love for it. It was never overkill with it.
Yeah, you're probably. I would say that's probably right. I mean, you're right that there was definitely no overkill. I don't know necessarily if that has kept the love or whatever. I mean, because there are other things where you could say there is a lot of overkill, but people still love things that's happened to, like Star Wars or something like that.
True, you still get the moaners about Star Wars.
Of course, the moaners. And I'm sure if you wanted to get on a sort of a big topic talk debate about the Neverending Story as a franchise, people would really rip into the sequels.
Sure, yeah. The third one, I've not heard a good thing about.
No, it was. I don't even think I got all the way through watching it. It was a pretty poor film.
Yeah.
The only, I suppose, if it interested people in any kind of way, it's one of Jack Black's first roles.
Was that the third one he was in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where he plays quite a large supporting role in that as a bully. But other than that, I don't think there's any interest in watching it at all. Yeah. But the first one is nothing like the sequels, I think. It's not even, the sequels had no sort of feel. The feel of them is very different. And they came out quite a while after the first one.
It was at least the 90s, the second one.
They're both out in the night. The sequels 2 and 3 are both out in the 90s.
And I'm not even sure if the third one got a cinema release.
Probably didn't.
No. But and they going by the trailers and the posters, they look a lot brighter.
They are.
Whereas
absolutely.
It's almost a bit Dark Crystal.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, it feels like a lot that, like you say, we could put it into that group of movies that have a very similar feel and aesthetic look to them. Which are, grainy, a lot of darkness, a lot of candlelight, a lot of just, kids in peril, which was a very big thing at that time. Kids having to be adults.
Exactly. Just looking now at the reviews for it, 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb, which is very good for a kids film. 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and the most important review. Don't remember when I last watched it, but I've given it 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So there we go.
I would concur with that. It's a great film.
Yeah.
It's certainly one that I would recommend again for everyone to see. And, like I say, lovely to be putting on some for all films. For every age group. So.
It's certainly what I'm looking forward to seeing on the big screen, just for how visual it is, if anything. Speaking of visual, the movie to watch after that, if you are 15 plus.
Yes.
Brazil.
So
from 1985.
1985. This is a 15 certificate. So sorry, this is just one for the grown-ups.
And later teens.
And the late teens, if you Yes, if you like. Terry Gilliam, director from the Monty Python peoples, famous, very famous at this point, director, known all over the world, made many big films. This is an early one, not his first, but certainly early for him.
It was a few years after he'd done worked with Python.
Yeah.
Then he'd done Jabberwocky, which pretty much was Python.
Yeah. Yes. In a sort of production sense. Yes. But
and then Time Bandits.
Yes.
Which everyone will be watching again soon because they're remaking it.
Really?
It's a TV series.
Oh, I had heard that there was going to be a TV series.
Yeah, there's trailer stuff for that now.
I haven't seen those. Have you seen it?
I've seen a poster. I've avoided the trailer.
Right, you haven't seen it.
It's on a streaming service I haven't got.
Oh, so. I remember hearing about. I don't know if this story is true.
About Gillian
going on set and stuff. Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. Yeah, apparently he wasn't happy.
Not happy, no.
So that was 1981 or 2.
81, I think, for Time Bandits.
And then there was a few years, and then this came out.
Yeah, Gilliam sort of like has a bit of a period between movies. That's always seemed to be, because I think he's very meticulous about what he makes, and that obviously at this point he was very famous, so he could have knocked out loads at quick succession, but it's not like today where he's a bit more sort of like struggling to find the cash. I think at this point it was probably, he was up there. He was big name.
This is the thing, because in more recent years, I mean, he's 81 now. But there has been years before between movies, because he his passion projects, and he does what he wants to do, and sometimes it's hard to get the money for that.
Sure.
The only film I can think of that I would say might have been for the cash would have been Fear and Loathing, which was a big hit, but I don't know. But he, 12 Monkeys was big, so he had that 90s thing again.
Sure. Fisher King was a big critical success.
He's always been critically acclaimed, well, mostly. But I think sometimes his films are a bit out there, so that it doesn't always get the commercial.
Yeah.
And then they are really big productions as well. Yeah. Quite often. I mean.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think do a lot with the money, with the budget. He's very good at making things look huge. Yeah. I mean, he comes from art, animation, things like that. He's a big part of what made Monty Python's Flying Circus, more insane than it would have been otherwise.
It made it stand out from sketch shows visually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Opposed to just being a bit crazy. Maybe it would, if it wasn't for him, Python would be seen as more like the goodies or something like that.
Maybe.
But this one, Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro plays a supporting role in it, which is really interesting, because De Niro, again, at this time is like, he's not, his career's not waning. He's still really up there. Yeah. But he's not the lead in this, or even a main support. It's kind of
he's his second billing.
Yeah, which is not, his character is not at all that. It's an important character, absolutely, but not. Yeah. This is a very big film. Difficult to explain, I'd say, especially in a very short amount of time. Yeah. I would say if we were to give it sort of a simple look at, it's a look of a man who does not like his life and goes into fantasy world in the classic almost Python story of living in some kind of myth, either mythical or religious sense of like becoming someone because your life is really mundane and you're looking to escape into fantasy where you get the girl and you save the day and all of that kind of stuff. But really he lives in a really strange, just almost dystopian, bureaucratical world where life is very rigid and for the time very satirical. I think today the satire still works, but I don't think it hits as well because it's been done so much at this point. This is a very early version of that sort of looking at, in a dark comedic sense, where we are going, or where we're going as a society, it's a classic. It's a classic British film. Yeah, it's very, very
and
British.
It's Jonathan Pryce.
Jonathan Pryce is the lead. Yes, he is the man. He is our everyman kind of guy who works in an office. Doesn't like his life. keeps drifting off into this fantasy world. We don't know, in fact, that what's going on in the film is real or not, or if it's just in his head, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is one that before I reckon I first saw it. No, I wasn't young. Probably 15 years ago.
Right.
So I'd been mid-20s. But it's one that I'd seen the poster a lot as a kid. It was,
yeah.
It looked
Absolutely.
great.
I remember as a child as well, like seeing the poster and just being fascinated by it.
Yeah.
This flying man.
Yeah.
Right? Just, weird, just very strange with, like, is it filing cabinets behind him?
Yeah.
So it's just, really weird image.
Yeah.
But really fascinating.
And become iconic. This one is the kind of definition of cult movie, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
The budget wasn't as big as I thought.
No, this is what Gilliam did.
15 million.
Yeah.
Which probably 10 million went to De Niro. No, I'm joking.
I don't know if this is true, but I reckon De Niro probably did it as a favour.
Yeah. He might have even been something like he got a percentage of the profits or something.
Yeah.
But he's definitely there to help sell it to the American market, I'd say. But it's a good choice for him as well, really, when you think of what his career was before that. To do something a bit, I can't think of anything sort of fantasy he'd done up until that.
No, I can't think of anything. And this is a fantasy, but not in the traditional, so not in the Neverending Story sense of the word fantasy. Also got to mention a couple of other great British actors.
Palin.
So Michael Palin absolutely is in this and is terrifying in it. But no, Ian Holm and Bob Hoskins.
And isn't...
and some other names as well.
What's the guy's name who is huge now and in everything British? And he was the policeman in Only Fools and Horses. Jim Broadbent.
Yeah, Jim Broadbent.
Yeah, Jim Broadbent.
Absolutely.
Because when I very first saw this, I don't think he'd quite done the Moulin Rouge and gone to Hollywood. No. And I'm like, that's him from Only Fools and Horses.
Yeah.
I believe he's in Time Bandits as well.
Yeah, I think he was in a few of Gilliam's films. Yeah. But he would always be popping up around this time in a lot of these kind of quirky British films.
Yeah.
He plays plastic surgeon in this one. It's again very creepy. There's a lot of quite creepy characters in this film. But funny, very funny.
Yeah, and is Palin the only Python in it?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because
again was like
in his early career, Gilliam would stick a couple of Pythons in each.
Because you have John Cleese.
John Cleese in Time Bandits as Robin Hood
and also again Palin is also in that.
Yeah.
And Palin was in Jabberwocky as well, played the main part in Jabberwocky. And I think there's
I think John Cleese was a pirate in that as well. No, I'm getting confused with another film where he played a pirate, but
the other
Idol.
Not Idol. What's his name? Why am I forgetting? Trevor. Is it Trevor Jones?
Terry Jones.
Terry Jones, not Trevor Jones. Sorry, Terry Jones. He's in Jabberwocky as well. Right at the first scene, gets eaten.
Terry Jones, the greatest man to play a woman on screen. Yeah, Life of Brian, classic.
Yes.
But it's weird because I think I'd have watched this sooner when I was younger if I'd have got the Python connection.
Right.
But it's not that Python really. It's just
whereas
Time Bandits to me was that looks like it looks very Python.
Yeah, we're still very much in the realm. I mean, I do think that Brazil is quite Python-y really, but it's more.
It's not silly side of Python.
It's not the silly side of Python. It is more like when we get to meaning of life. Stuff like it's
the scene he done at the beginning of the
it's
very that, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, with the big flying office.
Yeah, it's that very. It's again, poking fun satirically at modern society and bureaucracy and things like that. Yeah. And again, I understand that some people might not particularly find that quite interesting. Might go, sounds a bit boring, really, but it's not. It's not. It's funny. It's clever. It's got great acting in it. Great actors in it. I think it's a really good story. I've always very much enjoyed it, and every single time I've seen it, which over the years has probably been about 4 or 5 times, I've always seen other things I missed from before. Yeah. So it's certainly one of those as well where you can watch it again and notice more stuff in it.
Yeah, I mean this is filed in my head for some reason. It might be because of the poster, but I file it kind of with Blade Runner in that. God, it should have been huge.
Yeah.
It wasn't a hit at all.
No.
It made 9.9 million.
Yeah. I think this is the one of the films that of the films that we're showing, I think this is the one that probably did at the time that it came out probably the least well.
Yeah, but very fondly remembered. I mean,
absolutely. I say, like you said, cult, and absolutely. I mean, it's very much a definition of a cult film.
Yeah, I mean, it got mixed reviews when it came out. It got some great ones, and then one, I forget where it was, but one of the reviews described it as confusing.
Yes.
When I watched it, I don't particularly remember it being confusing. But it might be because it's a bit out there, because it's getting into his head.
Yeah,
you've got to pay attention to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's again one of them films where people go, "Oh, I didn't get it," I just didn't get it. And it's like, well, all right, fine, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad just because you didn't get it.
Yeah.
So.
And often I think when people go into something thinking it's going to be confusing, they overthink everything in it and make it confusing. Which I think possibly when I was younger I actually done with Blade Runner.
Right.
I think I thought it was going to be more complex than it was.
Yeah.
And
because it's a fairly straightforward story, I'd say, Blade Runner.
Yeah. And I just had it in my head that it was this confusing.
Yeah, well, this one's a bit more like you said, it's a bit more out there, a bit more heady. A bit more sort of like, are things really happening or aren't they? And you just have to sort of go with it.
Yeah.
So,
So another visually stunning, as I started off saying.
It looks amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible. Really looking forward to putting this on.
Yeah, as I've only seen it once as well.
Right.
I'm like, actually, and the next one I'm going to talk about I've only seen once as well, but I remember more of that for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, this is on at 5 in the evening.
Yeah, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, and this is a longer one.
I'd say it's probably about 2.5 hour film.
Just under, I think. I think it's about 2:20.
Right,
like
2:20. Yeah.
And this is one that it's weird. It's sort of film that I'd expect to be shown every 5-10 years for its anniversary, but it kind of isn't.
Yeah.
So it's nice that this is one of the ones that you.
Yeah, I was very happy to see that this was part of the group of 80s films, because this to me is a very much an 80s. This to me feels like the 80s to me.
Yeah, and
especially the mid 80s.
I'm very looking forward to seeing it with about an hour's gap after Neverending Story, because it's kind of two different sides of fantasy.
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's the fun kids side, and then the dark with a bit of political meaning. Adult side, which should be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, very much looking forward to it.
Got me ticket for that one. Yeah. And I also I've lost track of time. It must be about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So someone's ever watched an hour. It's 13. You were never listening again. I'm gonna get online and know. Fame.
Oh, okay. So
a film that's going to live forever.
Yes,
it's going to learn how to fly. Hi. From 1980. What?
Sorry. Very good.
I like Fame. I remember enjoying this. That one I watched. I wouldn't have been a kid. It's 15, isn't it?
It is a 15. So I think because it had a TV show that came later.
Kids from Fame.
Which you know what? I don't think I've ever seen an episode of, but I heard about it loads growing up, and I knew that it was, more so for kids.
Yeah.
The film Fame. I think I saw for the first. I've seen it. I've seen this one many times. I think probably for the first time in my I'd say mid-teens, probably for the age. I definitely didn't see it younger than 15. It certainly is a 15.
Yeah.
It has lots of just stuff that's for grown-ups.
Yeah.
In it.
It's kind of a bit. Don't get angry at me for this, because I take it at the moment as bits of it are a bit St Elmo's Fire to me. It's the coming of age and darker side of things.
Certainly coming of age. And
it's it's not all light-hearted.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. There are some very poignant, important things which are still relevant today.
Yeah. Directed by Alan Parker, British.
Yes. Yep. Certainly made Bugsy Malone. And many other films.
The Wall.
Yes, that was the Pink Floyd.
Yeah, so it's director very connected with music.
Yeah. The Commitments, of course, in the early 90s.
That was a huge hit. And sadly passed away a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's right, very recently. Yeah. So I watched Bugsy Malone loads as a kid, so that's where I knew of him firstly.
That's another one that loads of people I know grew up with Bugsy Malone.
Yeah.
I watched it once.
Yeah.
It was in a cinema. Guess where I saw it?
At my cinema.
Yeah, probably 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That was on a Saturday morning.
Right. Yeah.
And, I enjoyed it. But this one I watched on video or DVD in my 20s, which kind of I think I was kind of the right age for it.
Yeah, I had it. Like I say, I had it on video.
Yeah.
Bought it on video. I think so. Yeah, if people don't know, it is about a young people, teenagers, going to a school that is specifically for the performing arts. I forget the name of the school. It was a real school, has closed down. In fact, wasn't long after the film was made. In fact, I think a few years later it closed down. So in New York City, performing arts school, different kids from all different walks of life. So you get right from working class kids of New York City to, posh, whatever, upper class people from the suburbs and whatever, all coming together, working together. It's basically about the lives of young adults making their way in New York City in performing arts. And you get to hear a lot of songs, you get to see a lot of dancing and a lot of acting. Everyone in it, as far as I'm aware, is not faking it. So the dancers are dancers. Then it's not like they're actors pretending to be dancers, and you get people stand-ins or whatever. That there are people that have gone on as kids, have gone on now to become choreographers and whatever else of the dancers. And then the musicians are real musicians, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, the woman who done the theme songs in it, isn't she? She's one of the main.
Irene Cara, who again recently died.
Yeah, who went on to do the song for Flashdance.
For Flashdance,
and I believe has a song on the Ghostbusters soundtrack.
Right. Yeah.
I think I might be wrong.
So she plays Coco in Fame, and is one of the main characters, and certainly one of the strongest characters in it. I'd say the only other person that I can think of that I've definitely seen in other movies.
I guess it is.
Yeah.
Is it Doris, who was Lois Lane's sister in Supergirl?
You know what? It's not.
What?
I obviously always remember. I always remember that Doris, but and obviously from Supergirl, ends up going out with Jimmy Olsen, which is a bit weird, isn't it? Anyway,
don't diss that film.
No, do you know what? The names I'm forgetting. His name's Eugene in Fame. I forget his name in real life, but he's he was in ER, the TV show ER. I remember him very well in that. But what I remember him growing up was him in RoboCop, where he plays the character of Emil, who's one of the in the gang. He's the one where his face melts off and everything. That guy.
Of course, yeah.
So in Fame, he has big ginger curly hair.
Paul McCrane.
Yeah, a big ginger curly hair in Fame, and you almost don't even notice him who he is, because in everything else pretty much he's balding. It's quite incredible to see him with so much, not just a little hair. He has loads of hair in Fame.
I suppose it was 8 years later, RoboCop, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And
so he's the one that I remember as seeing from being in other things. A lot of them have gone on and did other things, but not really becoming stars.
Yeah, no one's gone on to be that big Hollywood leading man or woman.
Yeah, sadly, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But everyone's great in it. The story is really cool. If you're into, singing and dancing and all of those bits and pieces, this is without question the film for you, because it is all of that and then some.
Yeah, and I think as well it's a good one to show for this season, because it was 1980.
Yeah.
But it influenced. I mentioned Flashdance.
Yeah.
Footloose.
Yeah.
These movies that
anything to do with singing and dancing and kids just getting up and having a good time.
Yeah.
There's parts of that here in Fame, and again the other side to Fame, which I'm sure does get talked about, but never is remembered as much as obviously the song and the singing and the dancing, are the more darker elements to it, which are about sort of like the way people can be abused within if we think of the Me Too movement, it's that stuff is in this film. It's touched on in a really poignant way, and in fact I remember finding it very difficult to watch way.
Yeah.
This is not for kids, sort of thing. Which, when you think of Fame, like I say, because of the TV show and how I always remembered that, hearing about that this was a show for kids, where the film is not.
Yeah.
So that's why we got it on later. And so
I think that darker side of it is why the film stuck around.
Yeah,
it's why
it's done really well.
But when you look at this as well, like I mean, the two of the films I mentioned, which were the two hits, there was a lot of these sort of dance-based films, so to speak, come out. One that we done a podcast on, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, which was a PG and bombed. Flashdance, a 15.
Yeah.
And Footloose was a 15. I bet might be 12 now, but definitely 15. Right. So they were aimed at the higher teens.
Yeah.
They were a bit, I think, like in the 80s as well, you had, say, Friday the 13th films, which were 18s, but they were aimed at teenagers.
Yeah, probably.
You know what I mean? So this was younger, but you needed that stuff in for the older teens to actually care, I think.
Yeah, sure. But I think that a big part of what these films is not, talking down to the people that are not just watching the movies but are also in the films, because they're young adults, right? And so that's the point, is like it's for people who are of a similar age to the characters they're seeing. So if you're seeing 15, 16, 17-year-olds on screen, that's the kind of age group that the director is thinking of, for the audience.
Yeah, I think this is pre-John Hughes as well.
Absolutely.
They
don't feel. Fame never felt like phony to me,
No.
or it was a fantasy, where John Hughes films always felt like.
John Hughes, the teenagers. Sorry to interrupt, but I think in John Hughes films, the teenagers he puts on screen are not what teenagers were.
No.
But what teenagers thought they were, or what they wanted to be.
Sure.
But they were overly nerdy, or they were overly cool.
Yeah.
And it's fantasy.
Yeah, it's fantasy, where I don't think Fame never felt like that to me, apart from the moments where it is singing and dancing and all the big production numbers, because it's theatre. It's you're putting on a show. But when we're just talking about the bits where it's just them being the kids that they are, the young adults that they are, this all feels very gritty New York. This is all very much, this is social commentary type stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And this is on at 8 p.m.
I think 10 past 8.
10 past 8 p.m.
Just to
we get there early, buy some snacks. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. I think just probably slightly on just a bit later because Brazil. A bit long, so giving a little bit of a gap between the two films.
Time for snacks.
Yeah, and all the rest of it, all those bits. Move your legs about and that.
Yeah, but so Fame's. I'm just looking at I've got the letterboxd up. Out of 5, 3.4, which I think is a bit low for what it is.
Yeah, I think so too.
But it's pretty much everybody has given it either 5 or 3.
Yeah.
So it's sort of that. It's not a film that's easy to dislike, I'd say.
I think you'd have to be quite a dull person to. If you really do not like people being watching people that are talented at what they do, then you're not going to like the film.
Yeah.
But what kind of person is that, though?
It's very jealous. Yeah.
Because everyone in it clearly is having a great time making the movie.
Yeah.
And they're all putting on showing what they're capable of doing. And Alan Parker is great. He was a great filmmaker at showing people.
Yeah.
I think at really giving people the spotlight and I don't mean that as in like you're the star of the film, but spotlight as in here you are, here's what you're doing, and I'm showing. We're not hiding away from things. We're not making certain because in Fame no one's the lead really. The lead is them, the ensemble, all of them, and I feel that way with the Commitments as well in a lot of ways. And I think he was really good at doing that, at showing that, not necessarily needing someone to hog the spotlight or whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a go. It's great.
And there's some bangers on the soundtrack.
There really are. It's a great. You feel New York. You feel the time period. You know, the end of the 70s coming into the 80s.
Yeah.
It's great stuff in there, and it's funny as well. I mustn't forget there are some really great comedic moments as well. Yeah, because people are funny, aren't they? People are, you know, like in real life, people are funny, and I think because it's not funny like haha, like oh look at this, you know, slapsticky,
not
crazy,
set up
jokes. It's just people talking and being funny, and funny situations, interactions with people. You know, very real stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
And
better than the remake, I will add.
haven't seen.
I saw that at the cinema, and like I remember it well because I went on my own. I wasn't living in Ipswich at the time. I was in town. I went to see it, and the cinema was fairly busy. But when it ended, you'd expect, everyone was miserable. It was like this, but it was an older people in there.
Right,
I think it was people who just liked it. I don't think it appealed to the new generation. There's no reason for it to.
Right.
And people who liked the old one went to see it. What's the point? Yeah. Still a good soundtrack though.
Yeah.
Boom. But it's a good soundtrack day. I mean, I from what I remember about Brazil, it's got a good score.
Yeah, absolutely. It works brilliantly with the film. It ties in really nicely. And of course, the song Brazil, which everyone I'm sure would have heard at some point. It's quite a famous song. Even if you don't know where you've heard it, you probably would. If someone put it on, you'd be like, that plays a lot throughout the film, and certainly again works with the fantasy element to the movie.
So we'll come away on August the 3rd and be like, remember when they put pop hits in songs and it was in films and it was really good?
Yeah.
Because you don't get that so much now.
No, I mean every single one of these films has got musical numbers in it.
Yeah.
You know, which are great.
Yeah. And God bless Lamar.
Yes.
He's in Kajagoogoo.
Kajagoogoo, yes. Yeah. But this was a solo.
Yes.
This is Neverending Story again. People don't know.
They should. But so it's August the 3rd. So get your tickets now through the website, King Street Cinema. If you Google that's the best way to find the website.
Absolutely.
I type in the letter K on my phone, it comes up.
It just comes up because you keep
checking. What's on. And so hopefully in a week or so, we'll have a second part to this podcast where we'll be talking about some of the movies that are on the following week. So you might be more leading this one.
Right.
Because I don't think I've seen many of the films.
Oh, okay.
On the Sunday, you've got to Do the Right Thing.
Yes. Which I know you have seen.
Yeah, I have seen.
Quite recently.
Yeah, so what we'll probably do is talk about that. We'll probably squeeze in 5 films to talk about. Diva, Blue Velvet, Babylon.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's another one.
Koyaanisqatsi.
Oh, yeah. That's on Sunday as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll be back and we'll chat about those.
Desperately Seeking Susan, of course.
Yeah. So I've also watched recently.
Right.
And I think we can have a good conversation about that one because I really like it.
Yeah.
And I know you like there's parts of it you like.
I like the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I do like the film.
And that is another just iconic. 80s.
Yeah, a very, very, very much of the 80s again. Very much.
And Blue Velvet, we get to talk about David Lynch.
Yeah.
So that'll be good because we
do get to talk about David Lynch, the director.
Yeah.
There's someone else we also get to talk about though within the film. The greatest man of all time.
Steve Guttenberg's not.
Dennis Hopper.
I was like Dean Stockwell.
Yeah, obviously Dino.
Yeah.
But Dino. But that movie's just got so many great people in it and great moments in it. So yes, lots to talk about there.
Lots to talk about, and we will very quickly mention as well because it's on the 80s theme as well. There's more Be Kind Rewind movies coming up.
Yeah.
Later on in the year, though, sort of after. Oh no, because you got Variety, haven't you, on the 6th of September?
Yeah.
Which is it's a month after this season, and one I'm very much looking forward to on Friday the 13th of September. Friday the 13th.
Yes.
The original. I love that film.
It's a great movie.
Kevin friggin' Bacon.
Indeed, in a very early role.
Yeah, and 11th of October.
Bacon.
11th of October, The Thing, which is another classic.
It absolutely is. Came out on my birthday.
Did it?
Yeah.
The actual day you were born?
Yeah, 25th of June 1980.
Wicked. And then
says it on the poster.
Yeah, and then I'll just go up to October because you've got the double bill.
Oh yeah,
the Joe Dante double bill.
Joe Dante double bill.
Which we've got to do a podcast on his career. We have to.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a legend.
Yeah.
Piranha,
and
then everybody's second favourite Gremlin. Now you prefer Gremlins 2, don't you? Gremlins 2.
I love
Gremlins 2.
I love Gremlins 2. I think it's one of the most underrated movies of the Hollywood system, because it really is the Hollywood system showing itself.
I think, because that's a 12 now.
I love it.
I'm sure that if the first one was reissued, it would be a 12. I think nowadays, if you showed those movies to a youngster who'd not seen them back to back, they'd definitely prefer the second one.
Oh, I would have thought so, yes.
Yeah, because it's just crazy.
Gremlins 2 is a precursor to so many of the style of storytelling that has become so prevalent now.
Yeah.
Poking fun at yourself, looking at the industry, looking at filmmaking, looking at franchises, all of that stuff, all of that deconstruction stuff.
And it's also very Looney Tunes.
It's extraordinarily Looney Tunes. And wrestling.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll hold back, and so future podcasts coming up. I'll be honest, I do want to do one on Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
It's a lot I have to say.
Yeah.
And we've got to do a Joe Dante one, because he's. I haven't got a favourite director, but if I was put on the spot, he'd be up there.
His movies always make you feel good, don't they?
Yeah.
But you put on a Joe Dante film and you just feel better than you did before. That's the truth.
Yeah. So get your tickets for the first week in August. Up until then, there's lots on. Go to the website, follow on Facebook, follow Instagram, and if you've hurt yourself, you can't leave the house, get hold of a copy of Matinee by Joe Dante. Because that's one of the nicest films he's ever made. I discovered.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So it's time for us to go.
Yeah.
We'll be back soon.
Goodbye.
Thank you all for listening, and get your 80s on.